Katie from the Wellington County Museum and Archives, and welcome to Telephone Talks. I'll walk through history to see how we have evolved our telephones into the cell phones that we have in our back pockets. For this month, we're going to be looking at dial phones and how it is that they have evolved from our early party line phones into an automatic exchange. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at what's going on with our dial phones. Okay, so let's say you have one of those really old first generation phones and you want to call a family member or a friend or business even. You have to ring up the operator and a physical person will then connect you to whoever it is that you're trying to call. But what if you think that that system is actually rigged against you? Enter Almond Brown Strowger. This man was born in February of 1839 in Penfield, New York. He spent most of his early years with his brothers making machines and other inventions to get out of daily chores. He participated in the American Civil War before becoming a local teacher in the town that he lived in at the time. He didn't stay a teacher though. He ended up building and creating his own undertaker business, and he moved around quite a bit with that business before making a very important stop in Kansas City, Missouri. It's here on May 10th, 1891, that Strowger would make his patent for the automatic telephone exchange. But how did he do that, and why did he want to build one anyway? So as the story goes, Strowger's undertaker business was one of two in the local town that he was living in at the time. That other undertaker's wife, she just happened to be an operator for the local telephone company in the area. So you can see where this is going, right? She would get a call for an undertaker business and then redirect all the calls to her husband, completely ignoring Strowger's business altogether. Now, when he found out about this, he was obviously very disgruntled, very angry, and he decided to rectify the situation. But he was a little bit extra, so instead of going to the manager of this operator and making an official complaint, he said, "No, I'm going to get rid of all of manual operators and I'm going to build and create my own telephone," which he did in 1889. And then he just happened to patent it in 1891. And he got rid of his undertaker business and made a new business around this new phone, calling it the Strowger's Automatic Telephone Exchange Company in 1891. He would actually install the very first phone that next year. So he had a pretty good business going on. And this phone right here beside me, this is one of his very early phones that he would have made, the Strowger 11-digit phone. It's pretty interesting looking, isn't it? So when Strowger actually built his very first phone, he didn't do it by himself. He didn't really know a lot about electricity or engineering, so he did get some help from one of his brothers and a nephew to build that first Strowger phone. And you know, he actually didn't stay in the telephone business for very long either. He sold his patent in 1896, just a few years after making a new company. But the good thing about him selling that patent is that now his inventions could get new hands in them, and new technology and evolutions could be made on that new phone to make it more commercially available. Because if we look on the inside of one of the very first Strowger phones, like this, not very standardized, looks really complicated. I don't even know how this really works. But because that patent was sold, we were able to standardize these dial phones to make them easier to use and make them a little bit more accessible to people, so they looked a little bit more like this desk phone right here. So now that our dial phones are actually standardized now, why don't we take a look at how a dial phone actually works? So if we were to flip this piece over, the dial and the number card, we would see quite a few really important things, but there are three very important pieces that actually make it work. One is the two dials. So these are sticks of metal that hang out on the back of the dial. One of them is very, very thick and it never moves. It just stays exactly where it is. And its neighbor is a really thin piece of metal that taps against that thick piece of metal to pulse and make signals to make the phone actually work. So those are very important. Right underneath that, you'll find something called a governor, which is a bunch of weights that essentially make sure that the pulses being made with those sticks of metal are at a regular rate, so that the machines and the operator are able to actually recognize those signals and make the call go through to whoever it is that you're trying to get a hold of. So now that we have a basic understanding of how a dial phone actually works, how do you make a call with a dial phone? Well, when the phone was first invented, they were on party lines. So you could have upwards of 10 houses on a single line. And your phone number was based on a series of rings that would indicate that the call was for you and not for your neighbor. With the introduction of the dial phone, though, and the automatic exchange, a proper phone number was necessary. They didn't always look like the phone numbers that we use today, but rather, if you look in the center of this phone, you'll notice that there is a name and 5 numbers. This is actually the phone number that you would have been using. First, you start by dialing the very first 2 letters of that person's surname. Do you notice how Fairview has the F and the A capitalized, and they are much larger than the rest of the last name? Those are the 2 letters that you have to input to your phone number first. Then you can add in the 47843, and that will contact Fairview. That's their phone number. So this was a standardized phone in those early years. Now, we don't have to worry about a last name at all, and instead we just have our digit phone numbers. It's pretty interesting how we started off with our early phones on a party line with about 10 people on one single line, to a Strowger like this that only has 11 digits and can really only call one person at a time. And now in 2021, we have phones that look like this, that not only can call multiple people at a time, but literally has all the information you will ever need at your fingertips. And phones have really evolved over the last 145 years, and I'm pretty sure they're going to evolve pretty crazily in the future as well. And it's kind of funny, really, that the only reason why we have the automatic exchange is because of one really irate customer. But with that, I think we've run out of time talking about dial phones. I'd like to thank you for joining us here on our telephone talks. And next time we'll be talking about cables and the various jobs that go along with this industry. So we hope to see you there.